Hyvää alkuiltaa, hyvät ystävät, ja tervetuloa meidän seuraan. Seuraan 45 minuutin aikana me päästään tutustumaan siihen, miten suomalaiset muotikauppiaat voi kasvattaa bisnestään verkossa ja samalla laajentaa asiakaskuntaansa. Ja nyt mä vaihdan kieltä. Welcome to all our international viewers to this Fashion Finland and Zalandon Connected Retail webinar. During the next 45 minutes, we will hear how the Finnish fashion retailers can grow their business online with Zalandon's Connected Retail. And for this, we are joined live from Berlin by Head Dr. Karsten Keller. Dr. Keller is in charge of this new business area at Zalando. How are you doing in Berlin, Dr. Keller?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sami, and I feel pretty humbled by the doctor that you're mentioning. that's probably the most German thing ever. But thank you for asking. I think in Germany the stores are opening up, and the Corona incidence values have gone down considerably. So it feels like it's spring, even though the weather doesn't live up to it.
Same here, not a great weather, but we did have some fun last weekend when the Eurovision Song Contest was on all our screens, and I do have to say that the German performance, the German song, what a special thing. You know, the dancing hand, have not seen that before on stage, but anyways, congratulations for your 2 points. And how, by the way, how is the fashion retail going in Berlin and in Germany in general?
Yeah, it has been really a tough year since last year in March. I mean, with a good summer last year, but now the values have come down and the stores are reopening or have reopened. You still kind of need a negative test in order to enter the store as a customer. So the frequency on the high street is still relatively low, but it's getting better, and the people are really feeling kind of we're on the right track.
So every time you enter a store, you have to show a negative test.
Correct. So typically you go to the high street, then you go to a test center, you get yourself tested, which can be a bit painful on your nose. And then for the next, I think, 3-4 hours, you're allowed to go for restaurants or stores or any type of entertainment. And then you have to do it again if you want to stay on.
It sounds tough, but it also sounds like it's working if the number of the cases is going down rapidly. Well, correct. Now you'll tell the Finnish retailers how they can cooperate with Zalando, and that means that the floor, in this case, of course, the screen, it's all yours. Take it from here.
Thank you so much, Sami. And yeah, warm welcome from my side as well. I'm currently in Berlin, as you can see also from the slide, but I'm sending warm greetings to Finland and Helsinki, because half of my team is sitting in Helsinki working on a business called Connected Retail. And essentially the title slide tells you the whole story. Connected Retail is all about accelerating growth on the high street together, so Zalando and the physical retailers. But before we go there, I don't know if that was something in Finland. I don't think so, because I've heard that you've been coping with Corona in a very positive and efficient way. In Germany, last year in March, this has been the it piece of the moment. So the toilet paper that was standing for the Corona crisis. Suddenly there was no toilet paper in the grocery stores anymore, and everybody was afraid. It also meant that the demand went down online and offline in the first instance, and then it had all the negative effects via lockdowns in the subsequent months and weeks and until now, actually. But what I wanted to say before we start, this is not the future. If we're talking about the future and a joint future in the realms of connected retail, we're talking about a future of growth and of fashion as real fashion. So I think I just wanted to send this one signal before we go into what has been happening over the last 12 months. So now you could say everything is different and COVID has changed the world quite a bit. The question is, what has COVID-19 really changed? And there was this analysis done by McKinsey last year. I think it was sometime after the first quarter. And the analysis was headlined with 10 years and 3 months. And what you see here is like a graph showing the e-commerce penetration in the US, pretty similar also in Europe. where it took 10 years to go from an e-commerce penetration, so an e-commerce market share in the fashion industry, from around 5% in 2009 to around 15, 16% 10 years later. And what happened with Corona was this. So essentially within 3 months only, the e-commerce penetration jumped from 16 to 37% in the US, for clearly to state also the geography. But this had all the different very negative effects on physical retail, with frequencies going down, lockdowns being in place and really driving also the e-commerce penetration. And then also on the e-commerce side, a lot of challenges dealing with the high volumes that were coming in, of course, saying this is a luxury problem. But what you could ask is, okay, this was Corona, and hopefully we're now in the moments where we are overcoming it. Is this something which will have a long-lasting effect? And there was another analysis that they did in the same report. They asked the consumers, how many of you have actually tried online? And there was 75% of respondents had tried online during the time of the pandemic. Again, that was sometime in April last year, so most probably these numbers have even gone up further beyond the 75%. But I think the more important number, if you want to answer the question, what has Corona changed or what has COVID changed, is this. So 60% of the respondents of that report actually answers, I want to continue using online. And the recent report, I think, was done by Goldman, if I'm not mistaken. They were actually saying that in Germany and France and the UK, these numbers were even higher. So that means that the market, the perceived or the anticipated market share of online going forward will still be relatively high, even after the times when the stores reopen. So it seems to be that online is finally there to stay, and it's there for everybody to participate in. And as always, kind of, if the customer becomes different, then also retail has transformed in some shape or form, if you want. So I think if you go back all to the heydays of retail, or even earlier, I think when the cities formed and the city centers actually formed, there was this high concentration of demand. And of course, then like retail actually developed, because then the retailers were going to the city center. The whole concept of a high street actually came up, and it needed a lot of investment into brick and mortar, if you want, into concepts, into ways of dealing with customers in stores, doing the marketing story around it. And all this kind of formed how retail then was before the pandemic. But now that the customers is transforming and wants to use online more and more going forward, again, retail is at this inflection point of rethinking again, kind of what is the winning formula. And this winning formula, to spoiler it already, is not an online formula, and is clearly also not an offline formula. It is a combination of the two. So you could say, looking at the picture before, wow, that's going to be a lot of work in order to correspond to the changes in the customer behavior. Here comes the good news. Everything that you need for this is already available. And this chapter is about how retailing is becoming collaborating, so working together online and offline. So not to tell you like the PhD that probably Sami was referring to earlier, that I've written on a totally different field, but to give you a story, because I think that tells the story really kind of how some people, even pre-pandemic, have used a combination of online and offline in order to do something really great. And the story that I want to tell you is the story of John McFeeters, here with the blue jacket on the left-hand side. In 2015, late 2015, John had founded a company called Stadium Goods, a retail company. And Stadium Goods is a sneaker reseller. They buy sneakers from consumers at one price, and ideally they sell these at a much higher price to other consumers who are not willing to camp in front of a sneaker store. What you see here is John's store. That is the store that they had for a long time. This is also where we met him. John operates the store together with his team, and we went into the store being on a business trip, weren't aware of the business, and then we just talked for a little while, and we were really impressed by the shoes that he had. And at some point we said, okay, this is really impressive and congratulations. How much are you doing in this business? And John answered 40. And his business at the time was 8 months old. And we said, what do you mean 40? Like 40 pairs of shoes, which easily go up to a value of around 1,000 euros and way beyond that. And he was saying, not 40 pairs of shoes a week. It's 40 million a year run rate. And we were so impressed. It was such a jaw-dropping moment, 8 months after the foundation of the company, to be at a stage with 40 million revenue was way beyond what Zalando had generated at that time. So we were just wondering, how did he do that? And I will tell you at the end how he does it. But he had one store, 40 million. And then about 6 months later, 14 months into the company, John sent me this picture that shows him in 2017 on the biggest stage of retail globally. This is on the Singles Day, the 11th of November, at Alibaba's or Tmall's Singles Day. This is the world's biggest shopping event, as you know. They last year, I think, did something like 40 billion US dollars on a single day. And John was here representing America because he actually met Jack Ma at the time, and he was really impressed by John and the way that he did his business. And he sent me this via WhatsApp, and I answered, and John, congratulations, and how much is it now? And he said 80 million. So that was just 6 months after we first met. And then the last thing was about 7-8 months later, John sold his company to Fafin for 250 million euros, about 21 months after the inception of the company, and obviously had built like a retail fortune. He's still on board of Stadium Goods. But you're asking now, what did he do right? Why was he able to grow that fast with one single store to, at that moment in time, 120 million retail value? And the one thing that he did differently was he had his store and he connected the stock in his store to platforms around the globe. For example, Tmall in China. And that was the turbocharge for his business. And this way, kind of he could grow his business by combining online and offline. That's the story I wanted to give you as an outlook, kind of what you can do if you combine the two. So you could say, okay, it's all available. So these platforms are there, but probably it's super difficult. And what I can tell you today, it's actually not, because everybody, and here when I built the presentation, essentially everybody was underlined. Everybody can participate in this business, not only John. First of all, kind of when we're talking about this type of model, and we call it connected retail, you could ask, what is it actually? And when we were thinking about which challenges do we as Zalando have on our platform, then we were easily looking into problems like availability of products. So we're getting around 150 million requests per year from customers saying, hey, I wanted this item in my size, but I didn't get it because it was sold out. So it's sizable business that is left behind just because we don't have the availability of product. And the second problem that we have is a bit like we want to deliver super fast, ideally on the same day, but from a warehouse, most of the time you cannot do it. And the third thing is sustainability. So kind of delivering product from the place where it is at that moment to the customer in a fast or short amount of time in a sustainable way. So good for the planet, which is also hard if you ship from a warehouse in Italy to a customer in Lapland, for example. And having all those problems in mind, sorry for the long pretext, we were looking into an area of the industry which nobody actually had on the radar. And we were looking into offline retail. And what we found was we didn't have a clue really how many stores are out there in Europe, all over the countries that Zalando is operating in. And Google then told us from their maps business that it essentially is 300,000 stores, which are somewhere around fashion lifestyle. So all those stores are actually carrying 15 to 16 billion items at any moment in time. They're closer to the customer than any warehouse could ever be. And they have all the capabilities and the knowledge about the product, the customers, so that they could actually also advise the customers maybe in a much better way than an online platform can do on site. So you have the problems in mind still: availability of products, speed of delivery, sustainability, and probably you already think, oh, okay, here is the combination, and yes, here it is. So if you have 300,000 stores on the one hand side that could solve the problem, and more than 42 million customers, sorry for the German here, probably we forgot to translate it, 42 million customers on the Zalando platform, which are happily buying every now and then. And combining those, we thought, wow, what a great idea. And then we coined it connected retail. And connected retail nowadays is the stores that are connected to our model, with this to the Zalando platform. They receive orders and then they ship the orders or the items directly to the customers. In the future, so this is virtual demand, which is coming to your store, but real revenue, of course, and quite a lot of it, by the way. But the models that we're working on now for the next year, ideally we have them ready by the beginning of 2022, is click and collect. So sending physical customers, from Zalando customers, to physical stores of our connected retailers. And the same also for the returns, because we were thinking, wouldn't it be super cool if you do not have to go back for a shoe that doesn't fit you, back to the post office, hand back your return, and then you have to wait for the money, and then you order it again, and maybe it still doesn't fit. Wouldn't it be great if you could go just back to the store where it was coming from, this item, and exchange it against like a fitting size? So that is return to store. But these are the models, or some of the models that we have in mind for connected retail. But as you see, connected retail is the combination of an online platform with 42 million customers and combining this with up to 300,000 stores all across Europe. If you want to see kind of how that actually works in practice, Martin Heinzmann is a good example. He is the COO of Hagemeyer Mode in Germany, and forgive the German voiceover here, but we subtitled it if you're not fluent in the language. So please have a look at Martin Heinzmann and his business in connected retail.
Mein Name ist Jennifer Klauser. Ich leite bei uns im Unternehmen unseren Online-Bereich und ich bin hier in Minden geboren, lebe schon seit 27 Jahren hier.
Mein Name ist Martin Heinzmann. Ich bin seit 10 Jahren hier bei Hagemeyer und bin seit dieser Zeit auch in Minden. Bei Hagemeyer bin ich tätig als COO in der Geschäftsleitung und als Organisationsleiter kam jetzt auch online dazu. Hagemeyer hat im letzten Jahr sein 140-jähriges Jubiläum gefeiert, wurde 1879 gegründet als kleine Tuchmanufaktur, und für Lifestyle, Mode, für Treffen, für Geselligkeit sind wir einfach der erste Anlaufpunkt in Minden.
Wir haben Connected Retail in unseren Tagesablauf so integriert, dass wir an 3 verschiedenen Zeiten am Tag die Pickzettel auf die Fläche geben. Die Mitarbeiter auf der Fläche suchen die Bestellungen dann raus. Anschließend gehen die Boxen in den Online-Bereich, dort wird die Ware versandfertig gemacht.
Wenn jetzt ein Händler vor der Entscheidung steht, soll ich bei Connected Retail mitmachen, dann ist unsere Empfehlung ganz klar, ja, auf jeden Fall mitmachen. Unsere Kunden vor Ort profitieren auch davon, dass wir auch online versenden. Wir können modischere Sortimente zeigen. Unsere Einkäufer sind ein bisschen mutiger im Einkauf, weil sie einfach wissen, was für den Mindener Markt vielleicht nicht passt, findet auf jeden Fall bundesweit Einkäufer. Ja, dieses neue Modell, online und offline in einer Hand, ist, glaube ich, gekommen, um zu bleiben. Also das wird für uns auf jeden Fall weitergehen.
So let's move on here. What you can see from Martin Heinzmann's story is something which I think ultimately we always subtitle with win-win-win. And with that, we mean on the one hand side, of course, we're solving relevant customer problems. That is always the starting point for a relevant and sustainable business, because the customer needs to love it in order for the retailer actually to continue it. And they get all the availability of product, the faster deliveries, and the more sustainable way of getting their product. For the retailer, you could say, first of all, it is additional revenue, and that is absolutely true, and quite a lot of this. But what Martin in his video also talked about, there's other components which are really interesting. So typically, kind of when you look at a store, under the pressure of, let's forget the pandemic for a moment, but under the pressure of reduced frequency on the high street, this also brings down the turn rate of the stock in the store. And this makes the retailer actually invest into less risky styles. What Martin was saying is that by using connected retail, he can increase the stock turn in his store and also invest into more risky styles, because he knows that online he will always be able to sell it to some customer in his entire country. And that is something that connected retail not only gives you additional revenue, but it also makes your shop ultimately more attractive, because the assortment that you can present is actually fresher than what it would be without connected retail. And ultimately, of course, it's a win-win-win. So it's also a win for us. Ultimately, we become more relevant as a platform. And of course, we also participate in the revenues that are generated on the platform. So this is like our good summary of this is something that works. Maybe you're asking yourselves now, how does it actually work in practice? So here you go. Number one, we built connected retail with the logic of everybody should be able to participate without big investments, without IT projects or what have you. And here you go. So first of all, we take from the ERP system in your store or the POS system, wherever you store your inventory data, we get a so-called CSV file export. Picture that as an Excel file with 3 columns. Number one, it tells us which EANs do you have in your store. Number 2, how many items of this EAN do you want to sell? And number 3, at what price do you want to sell this item? And this is coming out of your system every 15 minutes, so automatically generated, and that's it. You don't need to do any additional things. Then you're connected, and once you're connected, this happens. So a customer on Zalando would seek for a Timberland shoe, would find it, would check out the regular way and pay for it. Zalando then takes the payment, and the order then is not forwarded to the warehouse of Zalando, it's actually forwarded to the store, so maybe to your store. And your shop assistants would see exactly this. So this is the interface, which is built as a website, and every internet-ready computer can actually work with it. And you just additionally need a printer to print out the delivery documents. So you see this, the shop assistant then prints a pick list or takes his mobile, goes to the shop floor, finds the item, brings it back to the desk, puts it into the parcel. The system has already printed out the delivery documents, and ultimately then he hands it over in the evening to the carrier. And once this is done, the carrier hands it over to the customer, and the customer ideally loves it. And if she has a question about the item, then essentially she would call the Zalando customer care. So you also don't need to take care of additional processes. But we would take care of that. If the question cannot be solved by us, we would come back to your store, but that is happening very scarcely. And ideally, all the questions are answered. If that is not the case and she doesn't like the item and returns it, it can go back to the store. It could also go back to one of your warehouses if you have one, or to another store. And in the future, it can also go back to our warehouse so that we take over the processing of the items that have been returned. So that's it. That's ship from store. This is how we operate connected retail today. So no high requirements. As said, everybody is meant to be able to work with this, or should be able to work with this. Doesn't matter if it's a big department store like Stockmann, for example, in Helsinki, or a very small 80 square meter shoe shop just around the corner. So the model connected retail has changed a few lives, so including myself. But to give you a bit of an idea of how far we've stretched this. So with Finland included, we're now active in 10 countries, as of Monday in 11 countries with connected retail, because Monday we're going live in Switzerland. And we have by now 4,000 stores connected, or more than 4,000, substantially more than 4,000 stores connected to the Zalando platform. This is actually quite a huge network that has built out, and some of my colleagues are referring to it as a movement, because now suddenly the retailers and the brands are starting to motivate themselves to actually join the model, because it has really worked out nicely for them, specifically during the pandemic, of course. So, and if you look at the last year and quarter, so since 1st of January 2020, 16 million shipments have been processed by the stores. This is an enormous number, and if you just want to understand how big this is, if you take the regular Zalando boxes and put them on the short side of the box next to each other, then this would be worth 40,000 kilometers of parcels going all around the world once. And now we're on our second tour around the globe, if you want. So we found that amazingly impressive and so good to see that this is possible during a pandemic, specifically during lockdowns. If you want to see a few stories, because I really think that the stories make the difference. Modehaus Heinze, somewhere in Frankenberg in the middle of Germany, one of our early partners, they actually saw hypergrowth. No? So specifically during lockdown, they had sent all their employees home. Then they pulled them all back to the store because suddenly with connected retail, they had a lot of demand. And here you can see that all the hangars are empty and all the parcels are full and piling up to the roof. The second example is a bestseller store, I think in Dresden here. They were drowning in orders. And if you're a bit worried, if you see this, don't worry, because you can say how many orders you want to receive per day maximum. Could also say I only want one order. So don't worry, kind of, you will not be drowned in orders, but if you want to, you could be. And the last one is Der Schuhladen. It's a small store in the middle of Germany, run by Roman Degenhardt here in the middle. And that was an incredible moment, because in the middle of the pandemic, June last year, we visited him in the city of Marburg, where he, in the middle of the pandemic, where a lot of stores were still closed, he was opening a new store. And he was saying, I can only do that profitably because I have connected retail and because I have omni-channel sales next to my sales to the customers in the store. I think that was just a great story. And on that day, he had sent his 100,000th parcel. That's why the big parcel with the golden letters here. But by now, I think he's easily beyond 500,000 of parcels that he has sent. So absolutely cool story, I thought. So the question is now, maybe kind of you ask yourself, okay, cool story, but what does that mean? As said, we are already in Finland, so everybody of you who would be interested could join the model. And with everybody, we really mean everybody who has a store with items that are somewhat in the fashion lifestyle category. So that is fashion, apparel, that is shoes, that is accessories, that is sports, that is beauty. These are the categories that we are serving today. And really everybody can participate in here. The asterisk is only in the relevant categories. So if you consider yourself to be one of all of these, you have to know that in connected retail, you're always in control. So if you say, I only want one order per day, as I said earlier, you can say, I only want one order per day. If you say, I only want to sell shoes, but I don't want to sell my apparel, or I want to sell only women's wear, but not kids wear, I want to sell goods that are older and not goods that are newer in my store, you have the choice to say that. You can also say how many of the items you want to sell. So if you have 5 items in your store, but you definitely want to reserve 3 items for customers in your store, you are in full control. So this is everything that is in your hands. And ultimately, you can consider connected retail almost like maybe kind of even a better version of your own website, because all the control that you have on your own website, you also have on connected retail. The costs associated to it is none of these. So there's no setup cost. We do not charge anything to connect you to the model. There's no fixed cost. Every cost that we have, the only cost that we charge is a commission. This is fully variable and only is charged if the customer keeps the item. So there's no cost on our side for you that is charged when the customer returns the item. And the technology you also get as part of the commission that we charge only for the sold items. And what you see kind of if you compare connected retail to other platforms, I think we can credibly say that it has the lowest commission in the market. Until end of year, we have even discounted it to 7% flat for international markets. If you have a lot of low price points, we also can vary on low and high price points, but take 7% average until end of year. And we will bring a lot of orders to your store if you only wish so. And then if you're interested, this is where you can find us on the web, www.connectedretail as one word, .fi, for the Finnish website of Connected Retail. And with that, I wanted to close. Maybe I leave that open for another second for you to write it down, connectedretail.fi. This is where you can reach us, and we will definitely come back to you if you want, even by phone. And ultimately, it's wrapping it up with John and his story, because I think he has shown clearly what the future of retail is. And we think the future of retail is one thing, it is connected. And it is not connected sometime in the future. The future has already started. And if you're willing to join this model and also try out the model that John has actually done with his Stadium Goods store, then Connected Retail is all in for you. Thank you so much for listening, and Sami, back to you.
Here I am, and thank you very much, Carsten. Am I saying right? Is Berlin turning into a sunny city?
It totally is. I think the sky is just brightening up, and I think I need to I need to move myself around in order to be visible.
Carsten, it must have been your presentation, which made even the sun come out, because it's interesting and inspiring. And I do have to say that win-win-win sounds good to me. You know, if everybody wins, that's a great situation. But now we have the viewers have a chance to ask questions in case they want to, and te voitte kysyä, hyvät ystävät, niin molemmilla kielillä, englanniksi tai suomeksi. Jos haluatte kysyä suomeksi, niin mä voin sitten kääntää ne kysymykset. Ja siellä YouTubessa on kysymyskenttä, mihin voitte sitten täyttää teidän kysymykset tai laittaa ja lähettää meille, niin vastataan näihin. But while we are waiting for the questions from the audience, I would like to ask you something. You made everything sound so easy and simple, but in your experience, what are the challenges that the retailers face when they join your program?
Yeah, I think as a retailer, you should probably not have made your PhD in technology, no? So you don't have to. I think as a retailer, you're, for very good reasons, you're focused on your customer. And first of all, what you may perceive as a huge challenge is you've got your ERP POS system, but how do you now connect this to our platform? And that is something that we are trying to make as easy as possible. So we even kind of have a company on the sideline that could help to generate this export that we need in order to know what you want to sell on Zalando. So that may be a perceived challenge. It actually in real life is not. The other thing that probably you just need to set up is a contract with a local carrier. I think in Finland we contracted with Post Nord to start with. And this is something which is also relatively easy, but should be done early on in the process, because sometimes it takes a bit of the time. And I think the third thing is, to be honest, kind of when I was saying, when we looked at Connected Retail and when we set it up, it was a bit like that we also didn't have the physical stores on the radar. And probably for you as a retailer with a physical store, and many physical stores, is also not a natural choice to look into the direction of Zalando. But the good news was really kind of that once we opened up our minds, then it was all really becoming easy, because it was not that strategic evaluation of, are we all kind of good for each other? We just did it, and then we experience is good for everybody. So this win-win-win really played out. And therefore, I think to be honest, it is easy to get into this model, to try it out, specifically now with the reduced commission until end of year. You can just risk-free try it out and then make up your mind, is it good for me, or do I not like it for any kind of reason?
Okay, you mentioned a reduced commission. So I do have to ask you, you went around and around the commission in many ways. So what is the commission then that you charge?
Yeah, so first of all, the commission is only charged as said on sold items. So if a customer returns an item, we don't take any commission for it. There's also, as said, no fixed cost. The commission that we charge regularly, so outside of the reduced commission, is structured as a step function. If you want, we start with very low commission on low price points, starting at 5%. For low price point items and going all the way up to 18% for very high price points. And as this may sound very a lot, it averages out on around 10% commission out of the sold item value. And typically kind of the way that the retailers, the 4,000 stores that are already operating it, they are looking at it like, what are my relevant cost positions? And they say, I've got the commission. I've got, of course, my cost of goods sold, like the product that you sell, and I've got the logistics cost, and maybe kind of I've got or I do have packaging cost, and maybe kind of partly the people or the personnel which is picking and packing. And if you put that all together, typically around price points starting around 40-50 euro, you make a really, really good margin with this, because all the other costs are pretty much sunk in the calculation. So yeah, that's how we set it up for a profitable business, because otherwise it would not be for the long run.
Yes, you also mentioned many things that have no cost, but what about, for example, the packaging? You showed a picture of Zalando packaging. Does it mean that the retailers have to pay for the packaging?
They don't. So also here, you're in full control as a retailer. You can choose your own packaging with your own label on the package, also to make the customer aware that you shipped it and that we didn't. And I think if a retailer is interested to benefit from, of course, the lower cost that we have when we acquire our packaging, we can help. But many of the retailers actually have chosen to take their own packaging just to be very visible to the customer.
Yes. One more thing that I was thinking about were the pictures, because you also showed in your presentation great product pictures. Do they have to be produced by the retailer, or how does it work?
Yeah, that was also one part of the making it easy. So when we started, we said, well, as a physical retailer, you not necessarily have your products all photographed and like the master data of the size and the washing instructions, everything codified. And I think that was a fair assumption. Why would you? So you have a physical store and you've got the product right in front of you. So therefore, we said, let's start with matching the items that the store wants to sell with the items that the Zalando platform knows already. And typically when a new retailer comes, 60 to 70% of the items that the retailer wants to sell are already onboarded to the platform because we produced the picture. So that means 70% of your assortment that you have in your store, you can start selling on day one. And if you then, out of the 30-40% of items that the platform doesn't know, if you say there are a lot of bestsellers and the customers of Zalando should actually know about them, then you can either produce the pictures yourself, or we can jump in and also help you with our photo studios just to get the product live as well. But to your question, Sami, you can come without a single photo and sell a lot on connected retail.
And do you have studios also in Finland?
Yeah, the studios are actually in Berlin. This is kind of how we centralized everything for us. So I think we will probably rather go into the direction that we work with local agencies that we can then link to you, or we set up technology currently where you can also, with a relatively low-tech setup with a camera and a bit of background, you can take a picture, and then we will have an algorithm in the future that also kind of optimizes the picture in a way that it works on our standards. So it should not be too hard.
And you mentioned the studios in Berlin. We have actually reported on them in our Fashion Finland magazine. It's quite an interesting operation, huge actually, hires and so many stylists and photographers in Berlin. There are two questions from the viewers. The first one is connected retail good model for also the brands and they own shops that only sell like one brand stores?
Totally. So I think when we say retailers, we essentially mean physical retail stores. And in connected retail, The first stores that actually participated were of the brands, the Bestseller Group and the PVH Group, so Tommy Hilfiger, Calvin Klein, with their monobrand stores. And still to date, they are one of the biggest partners also in connected retail. So every kind of physical store, be it a monolabel store owned by the brand or a franchise monolabel store, or any kind of multi-label store, they are all warmly welcome, and they are all reality on the on connected retail. So the mix currently is probably pretty much 50-50 between monolabel stores and multi-label stores.
Okay, and the other question is, how is this different from the Zalando Partner Program?
So the Zalando Partner Program, well, this is expert knowledge. The Zalando Partner Program is essentially working with warehouses. So essentially when you are a brand, for example, like Adidas, Nike, or any type of local brand that has a warehouse, you would typically go through an integration of your warehouse via an integrator into the Zalando Partner Program. The business model is very similar. So it's a dropship model if you want, so where the stock is sent either in the partner program from a warehouse or in connected retail from a physical store. But the big difference is if you are a store, then the processes of picking and packing and interacting with online orders is something very different from a partly automated warehouse. And therefore, we built this technology and also the business model, which takes stock of that stores have different economics from warehouses. It's a bit more inefficient. The picking and the carrier processes are also slightly different, and the costs are slightly different, of course. So therefore, we built connected retail really around the use case of a store, whereas the partner program is fully built around the use case of a warehouse.
Okay, then nice feedback to Karsten. A retailer writes here, nice that we can pack in our own packages. We join you. Thank you for the great presentation.
Thank you so much.
There you go. And then I would like to ask you a few more questions myself. First of all, the return to store idea that you have sounds practical and handy in every way. Why is it not more in use at the time for the time being?
It's something. It sounds funny. It's actually a technology challenge because the Zalando platform, when it was incepted, was of course first of all or it was not a platform at the time. It was built as a retailer, if you want. So we built the platform and technology towards a use case where Zalando has a warehouse and ships to the customers. And then in 2015, we started to open up with a partner program for the brands to also integrate their warehouses. And then with connected retail in 2018, also for the physical stores. So return to store has two big requirements. One is on-site. We need to be able to expose the stores to the customers. And need to have a situation where the local store was also the source of the supply for this specific customer. Currently in Germany and also in Finland already, the stores are sending all across the nation. So a store in Helsinki could send easily to a city in Lapland. Again, showing kind of my limited knowledge of the northern parts of Finland. I will work in that. I promised that to my colleagues in Helsinki, by the way. And what we need in order to have return to store set up in a really good way is that we, number one, have a lot of stores, because only if there's a lot of stores, then the local customers can also be serviced with a lot of shipments of those stores. And then we need the on-site technology that we can expose the store again in the return flow to the customer, which takes a bit of time and sounds funny, but it really is not such an easy endeavor. And then the last bit we have already, like matching local customers to local stores. So in Berlin, on a very low scale, we're doing already local shipments from a Berlin store to a Berlin customer on the same day. So one part we have already, the other two parts we still need to build, but we're on it. We commit to come with return to store and click and collect as well in the course of next year.
Why do you want to enter the Finnish market?
So you have to know that connected retail has its heart in the heart of Helsinki. So by being there quite a lot of time, I highly respect the Finnish fashion market. Also, Sami, in the discussions with you, I think you opened the box quite a bit again for us to understand how powerful like the fashion scene in Finland is, and also how particular the needs of the customers in Finland are. No? So you want, or the customers want, like the local brands as well, and they want access towards the international brands, and currently, I think Zalando doesn't have a lot of those very locally relevant brands. So I think that so I started with the heart. So 70 of my colleagues sit in Runinbergi Katu, I think is the street. And please forgive me my terrible Finnish pronunciation. This is also what the taxi drivers have to suffer when I come to Helsinki to visit the team. And they, of course, wanted us to be there because they developed the product. They want to see the product in action in front of their doorstep. Finland is a super interesting market with a lot of super edgy, super interesting brands, which are interesting to customers all across the Nordics and beyond. And without connected retail, we will not be in a position to serve all those needs. So it's a heart and mind thing that brought us to Finland.
Sounds great, and looking for the win-win-win for everybody, for you and for the Finnish fashion retailers. Now I want to thank, of course, our viewers, participants for this webinar, and especially to Berlin, to you, Karsten Kelle. It was a great pleasure to listen to your comments and hear your answers and your presentation. So now all that is left is to wish everybody a very, very good and profitable, business-wise profitable summer, and everybody stay healthy. Thank you so much. Kiitos tosi paljon.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.